All right, let's jump right into this highly requested explainer. We're looking at the fascinating and honestly sometimes shocking journey of a woman who took her health completely into her own hands after facing bilateral breast cancer. Instead of just accepting her situation, she turned into a full-blown biological detective. And what she uncovered about the food on our plates? Well, it's something every single one of us needs to hear. So, what actually drove this two-time survivor to completely eliminate sugar from her diet? I mean, when you've faced breast cancer twice, the stakes are incredibly high, right? You start asking the really hard questions about recurrence, about prevention, and about what you're literally feeding your body day in and day out. Her investigation led her straight to the sugar bowl, and her reasons? They go way beyond just wanting to lose a few pounds. To understand why, we need to look at the staggering biological reality. Cancer cells consume 3 to 8 times more glucose than normal, healthy cells. Think about that for a second. 3 to 8 times. These cells are incredibly greedy. They've got an insatiable sweet tooth. While your healthy cells are just humming along normally, cancer cells are out there aggressively pulling in glucose to fuel their rapid, destructive growth. In the context of cancer, sugar isn't just a sweet treat. It's premium fuel. So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. Cancer's deadly sweet tooth, 2. The blood sugar trap, 3. Gut health and immunity, 4. Unmasking hidden sugars, and finally, 5. The carbohydrate reality check. Kicking things off with Section 1, Cancer's deadly sweet tooth, focusing on the biology of glucose addiction. To really see this addiction in action, just think about how PET CT scans work. If you've ever wondered how doctors actually locate cancer in the body, well, they're essentially using a literal sugar tracker. First, they inject the patient with a tracer that's very similar to glucose. Now, because those cancer cells are pulling in sugar 3 to 8 times faster than surrounding tissue, they aggressively absorb that tracer. Then a camera takes a picture, and boom, those greedy cancer cells light up as dark spots. It's wild to think that the very diagnostic tool used to find cancer relies entirely on the fact that the disease is literally addicted to sugar. Moving on to Section 2, the blood sugar trap, where our survivor solves a serious medical mystery. So our survivor actually went out and bought a continuous glucose monitor out of her own pocket to figure out why she was dealing with this unexplainable, deep fatigue. And the discovery was honestly shocking. She realized that even without a diabetes diagnosis, eating was causing extreme glucose spikes, which were then followed by severe crashes. Basically, after eating, her blood sugar would violently spike upward and then severely crash down into a state of hypoglycemia. She was riding a dangerous biological roller coaster every single day, creating an internal environment that she realized was completely unsafe. And this brings us to the hard data. Official medical guidelines absolutely confirm that both obesity and diabetes, which, let's face it, are conditions heavily driven by excess sugar, significantly increase the risks of breast cancer onset and recurrence. The treatment guidelines don't sugarcoat this at all. Being obese or developing diabetes makes it almost certain that your risk goes up. But here's the real kicker. Even if you aren't diabetic, constantly spiking your blood sugar creates a highly favorable environment for cancer cells to thrive and potentially return. Let's dive into Section 3, Gut Health and Immunity, otherwise known as the internal battlefield. Did you know that a massive 70% of our immune cells live directly inside our gut? And guess what? Sugar actively degrades this environment by feeding the bad bacteria. Your gut is literally your internal battlefield. It's the headquarters of your immune system. When you consume excess sugar, you are essentially airdropping supply crates straight to the enemy. Sugar is the primary energy source for the bad bacteria in your microbiome. When those bacteria flourish, your gut environment deteriorates, heavily compromising that 70% of your immune system stationed there. And for a cancer survivor, a weakened immune system is absolutely the last thing you want. All right, on to Section 4, Unmasking Hidden Sugars, the Trojan horses of our daily diet. So, when our survivor first tried to quit refined white sugar, she did exactly what most of us would do. She swapped it for quote-unquote healthy alternatives, things like honey or beet sugar, which is known in Japan as tensaito. But when you look at the actual nutritional breakdown, you see a big problem. The carbohydrate mass is remarkably high across the board. Sure, honey might have a slightly lower glycemic index or maybe a few trace minerals, but to your bloodstream, and more importantly to a hungry cancer cell, a massive load of carbs is still a massive load of carbs. Functionally, they are pretty much identical. The tricky part is that sugar operates like a Trojan horse in savory items you would never even suspect. We're talking ketchup, natto sauce, processed snacks, frozen meals, and even French bread. This is exactly why you absolutely must read the tiny print on food labels. It's easy enough to stop putting sugar in your morning coffee, right? The hard part is navigating processed foods. Our survivor shared this incredibly relatable anecdote. She loved traditional French bread, assuming it was just flour, yeast, salt, and water. Totally safe. But when she flipped the package over at the store and squinted at that tiny print, she found added sugar, extra oils, and totally unnecessary additives. The modern food industry sneaks sugar into almost everything just to make it hyper-palatable. Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, the carbohydrate reality check, where we put the truth to the test. Here is a bit of a reality check. Even natural, whole foods that we consider incredibly healthy have been agriculturally engineered over the years to be much, much sweeter, which means they really have to be eaten in strict moderation. Our survivor pointed out that decades ago, if you bought a watermelon or an ear of corn, there was a pretty good chance it wouldn't be all that sweet. You might have even needed to sprinkle some salt on it just to make it taste good. But today, modern agriculture has selectively bred our fruits and root vegetables to be practically dessert-level sweet. They're packed with sugar. So, swapping out a candy bar for a massive bowl of modern sweet potatoes might still be flooding your system with way more carbohydrates than it can safely handle. And this brings us to a massive dietary myth: brown rice. Despite its glowing health reputation, it contains the exact same amount of carbohydrates as standard white rice. Very often, cancer survivors are told to immediately make the switch to brown rice, or genmai. But while that unrefined outer bran layer does give you some extra fiber and nutrients, the actual carbohydrate payload sitting inside that grain, it is completely identical to white rice. It's not a free pass, guys. You can't just eat unlimited amounts of brown rice simply because it's labeled unrefined. And the proof is right here in her blood work. When the survivor tested herself, even small portions of corn, sweet potato, and brown rice aggressively spiked her glucose well past the hazardous 140 threshold. She ate just 50 grams of these so-called healthy, natural carbs, which is a really small portion, by the way. Yet every single one of them shot her blood sugar past the 140 milligrams per deciliter line. That's a level generally considered a dangerous high. She realized that when she used to eat a full 100-gram portion of brown rice, her blood sugar would rocket up near 200. Seeing this data firsthand proved to her that even with unrefined, natural whole foods, extreme moderation and careful monitoring are absolutely essential. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. The reality is, cancer cells want you to take the easy road. They want you to indulge in those processed snacks, pour that sweet dressing all over your salad, and convince yourself that a giant plate of brown rice couldn't possibly hurt. They absolutely thrive when your blood sugar spikes. Knowing what you know now about how these cells operate and how they exploit our dietary habits, are you going to feed these cells or are you going to starve them?